So now we'll move ahead with the panel discussion. So this panel discussion is moderated by Mr. Mikhail Jacobson, President, Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association. So please join us on the stage. Now I would like to invite all the speakers. So our first speaker is Mr. Abhishek Gupta, Director EESL. The second speaker is Mr. Eric Lindstrom, Partner DEFCO, District Energy Initiative. Ms. Neha Nagpal Grover, Operations Officer, IFC. Mr. Sudhir Perla, Managing Director, Tabreed Asia and Country Manager, Tabreed India. And Mr. Tarun Garg, Principal, Rocky Mountain Institute. And Dr. Zulon Chen, United Nations Environment Program. So please join us on the stage. This discussion will be for 1 hour, and I would kindly request all the speakers to stick to the time limit. Thank you, sir.
So, like I mentioned earlier in my first address here today, that we have quite some experienced individuals in the room today, and not least in this panel. So I'm really looking forward to hear your insights from your daily work and what you have experienced in the past. I think before we start out with some questions, maybe we take a round and you present yourself, make a pitch of what you're doing in the daily work. Maybe we start with Chen Xiaolun. I will ask you to present yourself first. And for the rest of the panelists, you can try your mics in the meantime.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Yeah, hello everyone. So I'm Jolun from UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center. Actually, in UNEP we have this district energy initiative, district energy in cities initiative, and then to help cities mostly in developing countries and global south countries to develop and implement district energy, including district heating and cooling, and also together with my colleagues Ben and Rahul, actually we work in India in the past several years, and then to implement district cooling especially, and then actually we are also working together with AEEE and also GIZ and other partners, to develop this district cooling guideline, and also a few years back we developed this rapid assessment for 5 Indian cities, and to identify the potential of district cooling projects. Yeah, so I think that's it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tarun Garg, Principal at RMI India Foundation. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Satish today morning. So I think 3 years or 4 years back at Energize, I was in AEEE before that. So we started thinking about district cooling work with GIZ. And I would like to congratulate GIZ, AEEE, Bureau of Energy Efficiency. We have reached that stage of disseminating the work we have done. I would say we, because I was part of it over the last 4 years. And as Dr. Chen mentioned, I was fortunate enough to kickstarted district cooling journey in India. Way back when I was in PwC, we started interacting with UNEP and did this assessment of district cooling viability in 3 Indian cities. I think we have come a long way, and it's great to see so much of participation, excitement about the technology. And again, I would also like to congratulate Tata Realty for taking this up in a big way. I think this will give us a huge impetus to the technology, whether it's from the developer perspective or from the financial institution perspective. Looking forward to the discussion.
Hi, everyone. We are in the business of cooling, so it's our business to keep people cool. We essentially do either cooling as a service or develop and build, own, and operate district cooling infrastructure. We are in about 7 countries, including in India, with Tata, like you just mentioned. And I am managing the Asia and India expansion for Tabreed.
Hi, everyone. I'm Neha. I'm part of IFC's infrastructure team based out of Delhi. Climate infra investments is a priority area for IFC, and district cooling is increasingly of importance to IFC's portfolio of investments. In fact, we've been mapping global markets for opportunities in district cooling, and we have some cool partners to work with and India is one of the priority markets for us. Thanks.
All right, I think I already introduced myself, but I just repeat, my name is Erik Lindström, I'm from Devco.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Abhishek Gupta from Energy Efficiency Services Limited. It's an organization under Ministry of Power. We have been known more about doing energy efficiency related initiatives in India on lighting side, some on cooling side, and many more. Look forward to have fruitful discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for that introduction. I think actually I will jump back to Xiaolun. As you mentioned, you've been part of this since many, many years. Started to scratch the surface on the potential for district cooling in India. I'm a little bit interested to hear, what did you find at that time? What were the challenges you identified? And how do you see your work ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yeah, actually, we finished some of the rapid assessment study in the 5 cities, and then we identified several projects for each city as the potential for district cooling. And then at that time, it is included both greenfield and brownfield projects. And then also based on the evaluation results, and then we move on for a pre-feasibility study for some of the projects. As we can see here, actually, India has a very, very high potential to integrate district cooling in some of the regions, especially the commercial region, the CBDs, and also, like data center areas, industry parks. And I think that the market, the potential is huge, but actually at that time, that when we do the identification, actually we found that there's lack of, policy support, there's lack of, suitable technology which can, implement the project, efficiently and then operate it well. And then also we found that maybe there's the big problem is that they don't have the sufficient finance as of 2019. But later, actually, we found that during these years, actually, there's a lot of activities happen in India and also globally. And then we found that Tabri and IFC have some activities here in India also, and then there's several projects of district cooling, already, put on the ground and then ready to, move forward. And then from our side, we are really looking forward to it. And then also as of, this year's, actually, we found that, a lot of, public listed companies would like to or plan to or already invest, in district cooling. And then also, that these companies, actually, they have some special requirement when they identify or evaluate the or make the decision for the investment. For example, a lot of, some of the panels already describe the ESG, and then that is something that they are also looking at. So that means that they are looking at financial performance for the district cooling project, but also they are also looking at non-financial performance of district cooling, and then how to facilitate their investment decisions. And then also, in the city level, actually, in these years, actually, UNEP has been, working closely with different city governments to help to establish these city climate funds, which try to include cooling, sustainable cooling, and also district cooling as part of it, so that it can, help the projects, to, cover the most difficult years for the first 3 to 5 years for better, cash flow, and then also help to build up the market. So I think this is some of the challenge we see several years back, but we've also found that some of the challenge has been solved, but also some new requirements coming up as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think you touched upon those items where we actually have the specialist in the panel here. So it's perfect. We will start with the first one about the policies and regulatory frameworks. I would like to actually, Tarun Garg, I would like from RMI, I would like to ask you, what do you see in terms of needs for policies or changes in the regulatory framework and so on?
Thank you, Michael. I think it's important for us to start thinking about the narrative around district cooling. So far we have been talking about district cooling as a technology from energy efficiency perspective. or we have seen people have started talking about impact it will have on urban Italian effect. I think it's important for us to think and to position district cooling as a technology which is not looking at the active load, but it also looks at your passive load as well. I think I was talking to Sudhir as well. District cooling is not a technology where you're just looking at the active side of things, but district cooling will play a huge role in mitigating the ongoing urban heat island crisis. Just imagine what would happen if we remove all the ACs in the cities. I think I can tell you I live in Delhi, and we don't have cooler nights. I don't think so. I've seen that in the month of June. So what would happen? I think there are various studies. I don't think there is a study in India, even if there, I'm not aware of it. But there are various studies that says there is a reduction of 2 degrees Celsius if we remove all the air conditioners. So we have done a lot of work on EV. So I think just drawing some parallels from EV, what we have done in case of electric vehicles is we have transferred the pollution from the cities to the grid or to the main source. Something like that can be, I think in this form also we can start positioning district cooling as a technology where all the urban heat gets removed and where we have its cooling provided to the people who are living in the city. So I think it's important for us to start positioning from that perspective. Regarding from the policy perspective or from the regulatory perspective, again, I'm also sharing the experience we are having with one of the largest real estate developers, Lodha. So I think they have highlighted developers would be keen and would be happy to implement district cooling as long as they have supporting tariffs for district cooling. I think when I'm speaking about tariff, so if we have residential customers and commercial customers in the same campus, I think the residential tariff in India is quite low as compared to commercial tariff. So it's important for us to come to, from the government side, it's important for government to come up with cooling tariff. And it will be different for residential customers as well as for commercial customers. The question was, will a consumer be ready to pay extra premium for district cooling? I think I would say right now the answer would be no. They will not be. But going forward, I think if there are supporting mechanisms, they will be ready to say yes. The second part around from the regulatory side of things would be, we need to start treating cooling on par with how we are treating, other utilities like gas, electricity, water as well. I think that will be super critical if we have to create market for district cooling going forward. And, when I'm talking about cooling tariff, we have various stakeholders who will be, who will get impacted to the cooling tariff. So it's important for us from the government side, it's important to define cooling tariff, whether it's for real estate developers or somebody like the breed or somebody who's actually developing the district cooling plant, and then for the consumers as well. I think these three all revolves around tariff only, but these frameworks would be critical for the uptake of district cooling. And last but not the least, it's not from the regulatory side. Again, I'm just sharing some of the experiences we are having with Lodha Group. So they have also highlighted, I think, awareness, which was also highlighted during the first half of this workshop. Awareness will be critical for the uptake of this technology as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Tarun. Actually, on the same topic, just we continue to Sudhir there. As a developer and operator, what kind of policies are you missing out?
I would think that if we're talking of district cooling for scale, right? I mean, at this point of time where the market exists in India is scale within a campus level. So within a campus, you can have 5, 6, 7, 10 buildings, and that can happen this is far more economical compared to alternatives. So I think it's more about awareness and more about having providers who can do it. If you go beyond the campus to a set of buildings within the city context or to more buildings, then of course, it cuts across all aspects of policy, in fact, within a city construct, right? I mean, whether it's in terms of space to build a plant, to be called as a public utility, whether it's about power availability and having differential tariffs based on the customer that you're serving. If it's commercial, you have a commercial tariff, residential tariff possibly, even if not a preferential tariff to begin with, and right of way and easement. So it kind of goes into the entire gamut of urban planning, which has to be dealt with in some way to make it happen outside a campus level, right? So, but fortunately in India, because there are just so many campuses already happening, I mean, as a bare minimum, irrespective of city level planning happening, it should at least be done, I mean, pretty much mandatorily in any set of buildings within a constricted area.
Thank you. So we touched upon the policies and regulatory framework. Chen also mentioned about financing. Ms. Nia from IFC, you are obviously providing some solutions for that. How do you work with providing financing in the district cooling sector?
So we currently, the challenges that we are facing, the sector faces is high upfront costs, which is largely because there is lack of regulatory environment. And the lack of regulatory environment often leads to more risky business models. Again, then there is the ESG component which comes into play, which prevents the development capital from coming into the sector and giving a fillip to the sector. But I think all these factors can be mitigated. We are working on solutions from the development side where the risks can be addressed with some blended finance structures. So in fact, in the next COP, in the coming COP, we would be releasing and disclosing the multilateral financing facility. It's almost a $500 million facility which covers multiple nations, India being one of the focus areas, prioritized country, given the demand and the opportunity here. So these are, and then of course we work with partners like Tabreed who can address, the technology side and also, the project development risks get mitigated. So we are invested in an equity platform where we are looking at different projects, greenfield and brownfield projects. And again, we are actively looking to work with the governments, the municipalities, and local developers. Size is of a constraint, so the focus is going to be largely the commercial projects, but this is the area that we are working on constantly. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I assume that risk and a natural lack of pre-development funding is a kind of a catch-22 dilemma. I know, Eric, you experienced this a lot being in this field. Could you elaborate a little bit how you work? And I mean, you have to both help your customers to mitigate the risk, or to at least understand the risk, but also with a limited pre-development funding.
Thank you for that. Yeah, if I had the solution, we would have district cooling everywhere in the world. So this is a very tricky question. Thank you for that. No, but in general terms, as I referred to in the presentation, we see this enormous amount of feasibilities and good ideas, but not far from everyone get into realization. And one of the key components is the pre-development cost and the activities that needs to take place, perhaps during a year or even 2 years, where you spend a lot of upfront money in a high-risk project, essentially. Luckily, we have seen at least some trends on the global arena that there are more and more financial institutions and actors like IFC that start to understand that they have actually a role here and they can really make a difference. I know also UNEP are really putting a lot of effort, especially into awareness raising as well, which is the first step and a key component. I think for India, UNEP, you've been very patient. You started 2016 or something. So I think that's fantastic work, just to start to get the awareness raising and understanding of district cooling, and it takes time. And eventually it will come to the fact that you also need to finance the steps. And then you need to find institutions that can support. IFC is one example. And I also encourage, of course, the cooperation I see between actually the utility and IFC with Tabreed. I think that's a really a good step in, and that it can really make a difference in the market. Because you need to identify the stakeholders that can do it. You can say that for Europe and Scandinavia, to some extent has been easy, because we already have the municipality-owned utilities that can take that role. But we see the same trend also we do some work in North African region. They also have a problem that there is no natural player to fill this gap. So you have to more or less compose it when you do the project. You have to find many actors that together can fill this gap. Some will bring in the funds, some will bring in the expertise. Also, why not invite also the real estate sector is a key component that I think we have not talked too much about today, but The real estate and the developers are also a key component. They can also be part of this and support the development and establishment of cooling projects. We also have quite a lot of work in the Latin American region and the Caribbean islands. And there for sure, there is, in best of the world, there's a power distribution company that are just 100% fossil fuel dependent. Of course, implementing district cooling there has a huge benefit for the overall balance of these islands. They will heavily reduce their important fuel dependence. But the main issue there is also that who will take that responsibility? Who is the actor? And you have to work with for a long time and be very patient to find these various stakeholders that can jointly do that together, essentially.
Thank you, Eric. I'm jumping back to Sudhir on the same question. I mean, how do you secure to mitigate the risk or secure the financial return on your projects? I mean, on the same line, simply, how do you deal with this?
Sure. Maybe what I could do is I can just share a slide on the breathe and the projects that we have, and then through that talk through what we do. I mean, I don't know if that could be shared. It's a little busy, sorry about that, but so I think I just wanted to give some context of what we've been doing so far and where we've gotten to. Of course, it's a long journey ahead, but as a company, we are one of the largest public listed cooling utilities in the world, and we own and operate about 89 district cooling plants in 6 countries, not 5, about 1.38 million tons of capacity, providing cooling as a service or district cooling for about 450 million square feet of area. And as a result of that, that has translated to about a 1.1 gigawatt reduction in power demand and 2.3 billion kilowatt hours reduction in energy consumption, which of course, bases the country's carbon intensity of the grid, translates into CO2 emission savings about 1.4 million, right? And a lot of high-profile customers like the Burj Khalifa in Dubai and Dubai Mall and so on. How we typically try address risk is not taking just a technology view, like Eric beautifully pointed out. You need to take all the 4 quadrants together, right? So it's from first is project design and delivery, second is financing and capital, of course, and then operations and then maintenance, right? Now, on each aspect of that, for example, from a project design standpoint, we being, for example, a utility, we are technology agnostic, OEM agnostic. Every project is unique. You need to look at what characteristics are suitable for that particular project to ensure that you can pick and choose all the available menu of options of technologies to then make that in that project context. And these are mostly partnerships of sort, because when you're working with a real estate developer, for example, typically if it's a concession or even with a SIDC, like in the case of Hyderabad Pharma City, it's a 30-year marriage, right? So unless and until you work together in the marriage, you will probably part ways very soon. So I think it's quite important that in the design itself, we work quite closely in making sure that both the master plan can be envisaged, but also in a modular way things can be done. Financing is important, and financing, again, thankfully, because we've got 2 fairly strong shareholders, Mubadala and NG. Currently, we've got about $4 billion of cooling assets, about 35,000 crores, roughly, with the green bond financing framework. So I think, there are pockets of capital, of course, available everywhere. The question is, how do you bring that together with on-ground execution, and then making sure that post-execution of that, you can operate and maintain those assets on a long-term basis, right? And for India, we, of course, have this partnership with IFC. So yeah, approaching from a life cycle standpoint, taking care of technology, taking care of financing, operations, maintenance, each aspect has their own specific risks and working with partners, either through PPP or not, kind of automatically de-risks it. And that's where the challenge is. It's not about technology not making sense, but it's not the what, but it's the how, right? The how is where I think the magic is completely.
Thank you very much, Sudhir. So moving over to Mr. Gupta at ESL. So I would like to hear if you elaborate a little bit more. I know that you have been a part of this district cooling, what should we say, venture since the beginning, having a big role. How do you work on it today? What kind of risks do you see with the development, but also the benefits you see with the district cooling development?
Thanks. I'll just explain how ESL works so we can. So there are a couple of things which are essential for ESL to venture into. The first one is the standardization of the solution. I'm not sure whether that is there in the existing scheme of things of district cooling or not. why is it essential is the fact that it will definitely improve the cost economics of the overall scheme of things. Second one is the awareness. Still, we find that the kind of awareness which is required for this kind of technology to flourish at a much larger scale is actually not to the required level. And the third fact which is important is the repayment. Because we understand the kind of agreements which are there in this is of 25 to 30 years. That's very, very long period to actually entertain. And that is where the actual challenge we are facing, because we have done around 12,500 odd buildings. We have done energy efficiency related interventions there. And the contract period was 5 years in that. Yet we faced a lot of difficulties in recovering the money. And the buildings are quite similar to what is being talked about in district cooling. We are talking about the airports, hospitals, railway stations, commercial spaces, offices, and all. Yeah. So we have had a fair experience of doing installations and funding the projects of energy efficiency-based solutions. Then we moved to a different model, which is relatively hybrid in nature. I think district cooling can have a solution if probably not the entire investment goes from the investor itself, rather some part of that comes from the property owner itself. That helps to mitigate the risk up to a certain extent and maybe reduce the cost of pay, or you can say payback period for the person who is investing at the end of the day. Another important thing what we have come across while doing such installations is the operation and maintenance aspect of that. We find that in India, there are a lot of facility management organizations, but very little energy efficient equipment facility management organizations. And that's where organizations who are doing the OEM activity or who are the investors, they've got an active role to play on making the facility management of the installations more efficient, because actually the money is being saved while in operation, not only by installing the best of the products. What we have very clearly understood, we did thousands of installations of air conditioners, but what we actually faced the problem was in the O&M side. Proper upkeep of the solution what you are putting up is a mandatory thing for getting the right kind of efficiencies what you're expecting. So these are the areas which we thought would be important for us to understand and then go deeper in district cooling related solutions as of now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gupta. Now I've taken a lot of the time here of this session, so now the floor is open for questions to this prominent panel. So no hesitation. Any question from the floor? Yeah. Will someone help me? Yeah. Please state your name and organization and who you are addressing.
Yeah. Hello, I am Sarthak. I work for an organization called Climate Policy Initiative. We are a global research organization. My question is to Ms. Neha and the role of finance and concessional finance in scaling up of district cooling solutions. So considering the human impact of extreme heat in a country like India, would it be possible to bring in international climate capital in the form of adaptation finance? And what role can organizations like IFC play in bringing private capital towards adaptation finance?
So like I mentioned, we are working on solutions to aggregate development capital in form of a multilateral financing facility. And this is targeted towards the adaptation interventions in the country. However, having said that, the volume of capital available for evolved markets like India is limited. However, given the development strata for India, however, given the opportunity and the demand, the market dynamics, I think there is, we can depend on a reasonable allocation for India.
very much. We have another question here from the first table.
Hi. I would like to have the answer from Mr. Sudhir. We know very well that recently Telangana has signed up an MOU with Tabrit to be the technology partner in getting the DCS system involved. So maybe if you could elaborate a bit more on it.
You're talking about Hyderabad, Telangana?
Telangana Pharmacity project.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think this was an industrial, Hyderabad is a fairly large pharma manufacturing hub, right? They produce 1/3 of the vaccines in the world, and there are a lot of pharmaceutical companies out there. So when the state decided to kind of have a dedicated industrial cluster to kind of push all the units within the city limits into one location, they considered district cooling in the overall master planning considerations. Not only cooling alone, but also cooling, heating, along with what is most commonly done, which is central effluent treatment. So I think the way it was structured by them was, they said pharma requires a lot of process cooling. And process cooling, of course, can be at different temperatures, but you can still produce cooling in bulk. And once you produce in bulk, that could be supplied to each individual unit, and then they can in turn do what they want within this. So that was the overall thought process, and they estimated that vis-a-vis every unit doing their own cooling by themselves, there was significant benefit in terms of power demand reduction, water reduction, and cooling capacity reduction by planning it centrally. Right? So once they were clear on that aspect, then on how to structure it, they structured it as on a PPP model, essentially, where the state was offering, of course, enabling the whole aspect of making it work, including mandating, licensing, and making sure that tariffs are reasonable and end users are protected and so on within the pharmaceutical location. So once those aspects were taken into consideration, then there was a formal tender process that was run. And we were awarded the contract last month, where we committed to invest up to $200 million in phases, of course, as the overall pharma park comes up to provide cooling.
The feasibility report, was Tabrit involved in that?
It was done by a consultant who supported them, but we gave inputs through the process to make sure that when the tender was eventually launched, it is something that the PPP model can work for all parties involved. Right?
Is any funding coming from the IFC on that kind of an investment?
For the pre-feasibility or for the investment?
For the implementation part of it.
Absolutely. So IFC is our equity partner, right? So I think, we would be doing projects together with IFC essentially. And it is, again, I would say mostly commercial capital. Risks need to be mitigated and the project needs to make sense. But yeah.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay, I think for the Vikram.
You have time for a question? Michael, you have time for a question?
You will have the last one, Vikram.
Okay, good. Thank you. So my name is Vikram Muzi, and this question is again for Sudhir. So given the large amount of district cooling plants you run in the UAE and places like that, where the load is fairly steady all the time, in India, we have diverse climate in some parts of India, including Hyderabad. Not for the pharma project, but a mixed-use project might have diminished loads at different times of the year. So this will impact your billing if it's based on use. So you'll have to factor in that into your long-term plan. Do you think that would change the way you approach a project for operational costs? Thank you.
Sure, Vikram. Thanks for that. Prima facie, it shouldn't change that. Even though we have 5 climate zones in the country, people are doing cooling one way or the other. We've heard enough about how our cooling demand is exponentially growing. So the whole idea of district cooling is aggregating versus each one doing it individually, right? So in theory, as long as you kind of offset individual cooling systems with the central system, you already are bringing in benefits of essentially much lower capacity and of course much lower energy demand. And then you introduce technologies like thermal storage and so on and so forth, you further reduce the peak energy demand for the place. So I think, what matters is essentially the density. If you have a very fast spread out city, for example, or a development where you didn't have long networks, that could become a bit more challenging in India. So I think it's having the right load density that makes a difference for it to work.
Thank you very much. Then we conclude this session, and please give an applause to the great panel. Thank you very much.